Hey everybody, Patty Ann here. Hey, Jody had asked how to use this really cute paper doll set that she had found in the Silhouette Design store, how to use it with her Cricut machine. And she wasn't sure, she was having an issue with it. You can see how cute it is right back here, right? I'm going to show Jody how to use this, use it, make it in Silhouette Studio, and then use it for her Cricut machine or Silhouette machine. So join me at my computer. Okay, before we go to our computer, I'm going to show you how to find the file. So all you have to do is type in silhouettedesignstore.com, and I'll have the link for you down below. You don't need to remember that. I'll also have the number of this image in case you want to follow along. But you could just search for paper, dolls, and hit the search button. And then I just scrolled through here because I knew what hers looked like. Aren't there a lot of cute ones in here, right? But this is the one that she got, and I actually already own it because I just bought it so that I'd have it for this tutorial. So I'll click on it, and the only part that I got is the studio file. I didn't pay to get the SVG file this time, which usually you have to if you're going to have this as just a cut file as an SVG. But since this is going to be a print then cut, I can just use the studio file, assuming I have Silhouette Business Edition for my Cricut machine or my Cameo. So I'm going to get that image, and then I will open it up, and let me get this back to the way it would be if you were to first just come in here. This would be on Auto Cameo, and I would have these off. And the way that it would come in, I believe, well, why don't I delete this one and bring it in? I have this in my library because that's where it got saved. It's right here in my library. All I have to do to bring it is double click on it, and this is what it comes in like. Now you'll notice it's two different parts. This part has a white box behind it, and these are the cut lines here with no white box. The first thing I need to do is I just want to change these cut lines. I'll leave them red actually, and I'm just going to go ahead and change the size of them, the point size. Right now, if you look up here, notice it's 0.00. I'm going to change it to 0.75, just like that. So that's ready to go pretty much. The next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to move this off to the side, going to drag this over here, and I have to trace these. So I'm going to come over to the trace tool, the trace panel. These are all the panels over here. The one you'll use a lot in Silhouette if you want to make your own SVGs is this one that looks like a piece of toast to me. Some people think it looks like a butterfly. But if you hover over it, you'll notice it says Trace Panel. So all I'm going to do is click on that to trace it and say Select Trace Area. Just like that. Now since this is going to be a print then cut, I want to change the threshold, which is right here, and I want to make it quite high. So I'm going to go all the way up to the right with the slider. I don't like it that high because notice the jagged lines. I'm going to make it a little bit less. Let's zoom in and see. Okay, let's make it a little higher maybe, a little higher. Not that high. So I can use this one, the up arrow, till I can see that it's getting jaggedy like that, and I don't like that. So I'm going to go down a couple. Okay, so that's all I'm going to do. I'm going to unscroll or scroll back out. And now, ordinarily when you're making an SVG, you would click on the word trace. But since we're making a print then cut, I'm going to go trace and detach. Trace and detach. Okay, that has worked. So now these are all detached, and I can take these right out of here. I'll just move them right out. All these little things. And I don't need any of this other stuff that's left in here, especially the words or anything like that. So I'm going to draw a big box around it and hit delete on my keyboard. I'm going to try that again just to make sure there's nothing else hidden in there and put delete. Okay. Now I can move these cut things back in here. I can bring each one of these little dresses or outfits or whatever back right into here. You can use the arrow key on my keyboard to manipulate it so it's really nicely centered. Or I could click on, well, they're grouped together, so I really couldn't click on the two things to say center. I'd have to ungroup these lines. I think I'll just leave them as they are and just visually do this. Looks pretty good. That looks good, except for a little tiny, oops. Click on the pie to move it over just a tiny bit. The hat. The only thing that's not going to work perfectly is the hat. These little slice lines probably aren't going to show up, and these little lines. But that's okay because I'm able to do it with an X-Acto knife really easily. So there we go. All right, that's all we have to do. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to highlight all of this stuff. And what I could do if I want to is I could group it by going right click and group. I don't have to do that. But now what I do is with all of this selected, I would come up to File, Save Selection, save it to my hard drive, and I'm just going to name this Paper Doll for Jody. Okay? And I'm going to change the file type because this is going to be a print then cut. I'm going to make it a JPEG. I always recommend that you save your print then cuts as JPEG files. Click on that and say OK. I'm going to leave all these numbers as they are and say save. Now I happen to know that this piece right here, I can show you if I get a box and I make it about 6 inches tall, 5.5, something like that, maybe 5.5 inches tall. That's about how tall this little paper doll is. Maybe 5 inches, whatever, something like that. So when I bring her into Cricut Design Space, I'm going to design her or stretch her size or make her size so she's that big. So let's open Cricut Design Space, and this is one I already did, so I'll delete this one. And I'll have this one here that I did already too. I'll delete it. Now notice that my canvas is a purpley color. I'll turn it back to what it is normally. There we go. So now I'm going to go to Upload, Upload an Image, Browse, and I named this Paper Doll. Let's see, it should be in alphabetical order. Paper Doll for Jody right here. Double click on it to open it. And there it is. It comes in perfectly. I'm going to go Complex and say Continue. And then I'll get my Select and Erase tool out. That one right there. And I'm going to click all around here. Look at this little white spot up here. Get rid of this part right here. Looks beautiful. So now I'm going to say Continue. And this is what I want. I want the print then cut. So I'm going to click on this one and say save. And now all I have to do is click on this and say insert image. Here it is. Now remember, let's check this out. It might not be a good size, but maybe it's okay. I'm going to check. I'll go to the Shapes tool and get a square. And I'm going to make it about 5.5 inches tall because remember that's about how tall she was. So I'm going to unlock the lock and just drag this out. And I can see these numbers right here. And right there I'm about 5.5 inches. So if I want to, well, that looks pretty good. If I wanted to, I could stretch her a little bit. But she looks pretty good just like that. So I'm going to delete this. I don't need that box anymore. And I'm going to say make it. Now hopefully I haven't made her too big, that she's too big for the print then cut. Remember, for Cricut, for print then cut, we can do 6.75, which that would work, by 9.25. So that would also work. So we could actually make her larger if we wanted to. But I would just go to make it. And oh, by the way, if you're wondering, how do you know for sure, Patty, on what's going to cut? That's when the blank canvas color comes into play. Come down here to where it says blank canvas, click on that, and you think, well, there's no place to change the color of the canvas, but there really is, and it's very hard to see, but it's way up here. See where it says color? I click on that little swatch and I can change it to a different color. Let's change it to blue. And now we can see the cut is going to go all the way around this little kitty and then around her clothes. So if I say make it, let's look. There it is. It's going to go just like this. So I'll go ahead and say continue. And now I'll send this to my printer and say print. Yes, I know my printer's low on toner, so the colors may not be great, but it's okay. So while that's printing then, it's connecting to my machine. It's trying to. Okay, this is what has printed, so I'm going to put this on my mat. Now remember, whenever you're doing print and cut, you have to have what you place on your real mat the exact same orientation that it is on your virtual mat. So this little gal was in the upper left-hand corner on my virtual mat, so that's where she has to be on my real mat. If I twist her around or move her over or change anything at all, it's not going to cut properly. So now what I'll do is I'll go back up to my machine or to my computer. Okay, and I always have my Cricut set to, what is it called, custom, so that I can choose whatever paper or whatever I want to use so I don't forget. And in this case, I'm going to click on medium cardstock. So there it is, and I'm going to up my pressure a little bit to more. All right, so the next thing it tells me to do is to just load my mat. So my machine's blinking over there. Oh, this is not sticking very well. The first sample I did it on a mat that was too sticky, because I usually buy these green ones for some reason, and I know they're the heavy sticks. I'm going to use a little bit of Scotch tape to make sure I adhere this down so it doesn't wiggle around while it's being cut. So I'll just tear this a little bit up like this. Put it here maybe. Got to make sure I don't want to put it on my registration marks because I don't want it to move. And I'll put one more piece on maybe down at the bottom. I'm just cutting off some little pieces here. And let's see, is it going to wiggle? I think it's going to be okay now. Right there. So that should hold it in place. So I'm going to go ahead and load it, and I'll be back here when it's done. And now I'm going to press go, and then my machine is going to start looking for the registration marks, which will tell it where to cut. So what it's looking for these dark black lines. These are the lines that my machine, my Cricut, must see in order to know what is in here that needs to be cut. Okay, this has been cut out. As you can see, I can lift it off of my mat easily now, except for where the tape was. And then I can get these off, and a lot of people say turn your mat upside down like this. Makes it easier to get the things off. And then, as I said, well, there aren't any fold lines on here. And I'm thinking maybe I could have made the little red line a little bit smaller because it's showing. And this skirt, there we go. Okay. The little red lines are showing a little bit on her, so I'd have to adjust that I made for the cut lines. But you can see that this is working perfectly. The only thing, like I said, that I'll have to do is I'll have to take my X-Acto knife and just cut along these lines that were drawn on here so that her little ears will fit through there, because those did not cut. This right here didn't cut, and these two little spots right here did not cut for her little stand. But that's about it. And then this little fold line here. That is it. Let me stand her up for you. Let's see. Oh, they're here. And next, I'm just going to show you very quickly how to do the same thing in your Cameo 4. 4. So again, I can put her little hat on her now, stick her little ears through these little slats that were made, and isn't she cute? She stands up, she's bringing a pie to somebody. I wish she was bringing it to me. A little blouse, very cute. So that's how you do it in Cricut Design Space, even though you purchase this in Silhouette store. Okay, let's go to Silhouette. Okay, so here we are in the Silhouette software, and I'm going to show you how easy it is to do some fun things for this, for your Silhouette Cameo 4 or 3, also for your Cricut Maker or Cricut Explorer. So I'm going to go to the library again and open up that same file, double click on it to open it. Now the first thing that I am going to need to do, whoops, I don't want to move it. I'm going to go ahead and group all of this stuff together. Group, right click and group. Now what I need to do is I need to set on my registration mark so my Cameo knows this is a print and cut. So the size paper I have is important too. So let's go over here to the page setup. And I'm going to change this, the cutting mat, I'm going to leave it. It's my regular cutting mat for my Cameo. But what I am going to change is my media size, because what I have to use is letter size. So I click on the down arrow and I go to 8.5 by 11, which is letter size. Click on that. And that shows me the letter size piece of paper or cardstock I have to use. But not only do I have to do that, I have to turn on the registration lines. Remember in Cricut Design Space, we had those solid black lines that went around the image, and I said those were the registration marks. The Cameo also must have registration marks, and we need to turn them on by coming to the third little button over. Notice it says registration marks. Click that. Right now it says it's off. I'm going to toggle it to on and watch what happens on my mat. There are the registration marks. Okay, now what these things tell us is we can't have things outside of this little red line or outside of the registration marks or touching them. And I do have some little lines showing up here. And if you don't have those, what you can do is go back to this first little icon in the page setup panel and see where it says show cut border. If I uncheck that, watch what happens. But I like it on so I can see where the cut border and the print borders are. But the cut border is the most important. So now what I'll do, this is all ready to go. So what I'll do is come up here to File, Print, Preferences, and I'm going to change this to color because I want it to be color. And I normally would change this to best quality, but since I'm just doing this for us right here for a sample, I will just leave it as draft, which means that the quality of the ink or the printing is not going to be that great. But that's okay because this is just to show you a sample. Oh, but wait a minute. I said I was going to show you something else fun. Let's cancel this and cancel this. So the other thing that was fun that I was going to show you is this. I'm going to ungroup this so I can take this part out. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to just trace this little dress right here. Okay? So first maybe I better duplicate this by hitting the Alt and then dragging one aside, or I can right click and say duplicate. So I have that one. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to grab this little dress and I'm going to go ahead and trace it by getting the butterfly or the trace panel. I'm going to select the trace area and go like this. Now I'm going to up the threshold quite a bit like that. And I'm going to say trace and detach. So what that's done is it traced this little dress right out here for me. Now what I can do with this little dress now is I can come up here to the color swatch area and change its color. Check that out. I can make a different color dress, or I could come over here to the pattern fill and or to this little paint palette, and the third button over is a fill, and I could change it to any one of these fills that I have. This, and of course there are advanced options where I could change the scale of this to be very small so it looks better, right? Like that. So anyway, that's the fun thing I think that I could do, and I could just make a whole bunch of these to make different colors. But that's probably a little more advanced than what we're doing right now. So let's go back to just where we were. So I'm just hitting undo, 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 getting back. Okay. So now we're ready to go ahead and print it. Everything is fitting within the lines. I go to File, Print, Preferences, and again I'm going to have it at Draft, change it to Color. And lots of times I like to do a print preview. And if you're wondering what printer I use, I have it linked down below. It's one of the ones that takes the really big sheets of paper. So I'm going to say Print, and it's going to show me a preview. And yes, I know it's low. But here's what my print preview is. Perfect. So now what I'm going to do is I'm just going to say Print. That's going to print on my printer over there. And then I'll show you how I put this on my Cameo mat, my Cameo 4, and how I continue from here. Okay, it's been printed on my printer. Here are the registration marks. They're not solid lines like they are in the Cricut. Little square here that has to be in the upper left-hand corner, just like it is on my virtual mat. And then there's a line here and a line here. So I put this on this mat. I'm just a tiny bit concerned, and I'll tell you why. Remember when I decided to make that just a draft copy, a really light copy? These registration lines are really light, so I'm hoping that my Cameo is going to be able to read them. Ordinarily, these would be black, but since I did it at the draft copy, it was saving ink for me by keeping those kind of gray. So now what I'm going to do is, after I've already printed it out, I come up here back to my computer and I'm going to click Send. Now notice that this already came in the way I want it to. It comes in as cut, and sometimes that's not right because of what we have going on our machine or on our virtual mat. So sometimes what you do need to do is highlight everything and then just say Cut Edge. Okay, so that's not what we want this time. We don't want cut edge, we want cut, because we do want it to cut around all of these little things, right? If we say no cut, it's not going to cut anything. Cut, it's going to cut everything we want. Cut edge is just going to get some of these little things. I'm going back to cut, and that's exactly what I want right now. So the other thing that I need to do is I need to change what type of cardstock I'm using up here. So I can do this drop down menu and I get tons of different types of cardstock. And I know for the one that I'm using right now that I like to have mine on cardstock textured heavy. Not only that, I know that my blade, my auto blade, which is what I'm using, is getting a little bit old. So I'm going to change my blade depth. I usually do 3 clicks up. And at this point, this is something that you would want to test on yours. And to test it, all you do is insert your mat and click on the word test right here. And it does a little tiny test up in the upper left-hand corner, and you'd be able to see how well is it cutting. And if it's not cutting well, then you could change things. So I'm going to forego the test because I've already done that, and I know this works perfectly for my machine. So I'm going to put this in my machine, send it, cut it, and I'll be right back. Okay, my Cameo 4 cut perfectly, and it was even able to spy or to notice or to register with these registration marks, even though they were quite light colored. So I'll take this off of the mat. Should probably turn it over. Okay, there they are perfectly. And now this time on these guys, I do not have to use my X-Acto knife because my Cameo machine cut out exactly what I needed it to cut. In other words, these two little slits right here in her base were cut, as were the pieces on the hat. So I should be able to put the hat on just as it is. These two little pieces have been cut, so her little ears will poke right through like that. No extra cutting needed. Here we go. And she's very light, as I said, because I had used that, saving ink feature, the draft feature. But you can see how easily that worked. And like I said, I could have easily done some extra different colors for her of dresses. And I could just have a lot of fun making up things that would go with her. So I hope this helps. If you have any questions about either the Cricut or Cameo 4, please let me know in the comments below. If you have any issues using your Cameo 4 for something like this, I'd love to know, and I'll try to make a video for you to help you. So again, thanks a lot for joining me. Check out my links below. Really helps me if you're in the market to buy something if you use them. Also consider joining our Patreon classes every Saturday and our Facebook groups. So again, thanks a lot. Bye, y'all.